Have you ever stopped to think about how certain things change over time? What once seemed simple, natural, and even instinctive suddenly turns into something deeper, more complex. And the pleasure? Does it change? Does it disappear? The truth is that over the years, our relationship with one's own body becomes, and this includes something that many avoid talking, lonely pleasure. But does this common practice still be healthy as we get older? Or can it become an emotional weight, a shadow of what was once liberating? Today, let's open this subject like never before. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you click the inscription button and activate the bell so you don't miss any content. What happens when the body no longer responds the same way? The desire is still there, but the energy is no longer the same. For many people, the search for lonely pleasure becomes a refuge, a moment of connection with oneself. But what about when this search begins to be carried by feelings of loneliness, frustration, or even guilt? The pleasure, which should bring relief, can end up becoming an emotional anchor, something that holds more than releases. The truth that no one likes to admit is that life changes, and with it, our needs. What was once just a physical act can gain a much greater meaning. It is no longer only desire, but of identity, self-esteem, feeling alive. But how to balance this? How to know if this practice is doing well or if it has passed the line? Is it possible to find a healthy middle ground? Science shows that lonely pleasure can bring numerous benefits. It improves blood circulation, reduces stress, and even helps in sleep quality. But at the same time, when it becomes excessive or compulsive, it can lead to isolation, lack of motivation, and even the removal of important relationships. How many times did the search for pleasure become an escape, an attempt to fill an emotional void? And can this void even be filled in that way? Over time, our body changes. The hormones are no longer the same. Energy is no longer so intense, and pleasure can require greater effort. But does this mean that he must disappear? Or can we learn to live it in a new form? The problem is that many people end up attaching to what was in the past, without realizing that the present can bring new possibilities. The big question is that lonely pleasure can be liberating or can be a prison. It all depends on how it is viewed. If you become a substitute for intimacy, for human contact, it can be a sign that something is out of balance. But if consciously lived, it can be a powerful way of self-knowledge and well-being. The problem begins when he takes up a larger space than he should, when he becomes an escape and not a choice. Right, I trust God if you believe the best is yet to come. What few say is about the emotional impact of this practice. The pleasure is immediate, but and then, does satisfaction remain? Or is that emptiness, that feeling that something is still missing? For many people, lonely pleasure becomes an automatic habit, an answer to moments of anxiety, loneliness, or even boredom. But does it really solve these feelings, or just advance them? Many avoid talking about this because they feel ashamed, as if it was something wrong, but it is not. The problem is not in the act itself, but in the reason behind it. What is really taking this search for pleasure? Does genuine desire or an attempt to fill an absence? And if it is the second option, what could it really meet this need? The great truth is that lonely pleasure can be both a form of connection and a form of isolation. For some people, it is a moment of freedom, self-discovery. For others, it becomes a repetitive cycle, an incessant search for something that never seems to be enough. But what is the difference between one thing and another? How to know when this practice is being healthy and when it is becoming a problem? The answer is in the way you feel later. If there is a sense of well-being, if this is part of a balanced routine, then that's fine. But if then comes a feeling of emptiness, guilt, even greater loneliness, then you have to rethink. Because pleasure should bring satisfaction, not an emotional weight. What many do not realize is that the real problem is not in the act itself, but in what is behind it. Time passes, and with it, the changes come. But do we need to face these changes as something negative? Isn't it possible to find new forms of pleasure, new ways to connect with yourself? The body ages, but the need for affection, touch, is still there. So how can we respect these changes without losing in the past? Lonely pleasure can. There is a way to reconnect with one's own body, to remember that there is still life, that there is still desire. But it can also become a dangerous refuge, a substitute for what really is missing. It all depends on how it is lived. And the question is he bringing freedom or becoming a prison? Declare, Amen, I believe, if you trust the divine plan to come. Many people have never stopped to reflect on this. They follow the automatic, repeating the same habits without wondering if it is really bringing happiness or just relieving something momentarily. But the truth is that without realizing it, we can be moving away from what really makes us good. Are we allowing ourselves to live fully, or are we just content with small doses of relief? Lonely pleasure can be a powerful tool for well-being, but it does not replace human contact, the true connection with someone else. And when it becomes the only source of pleasure, it can be a sign that something is missing. What are we really looking for? What are we trying to fulfill? And is this really the best way to do this? Many avoid talking about it because it is a delicate subject, but ignoring it does not make the problem disappear. On the contrary, it only makes it grow in silence. What we need is a sincere conversation, an honest look at this issue. Because in the end, what really matters is not what we do, but why we do it. Right, Jesus, I trust you believes in God's transforming power. What do you feel after hearing all this? Did something make sense to you? If so, share it in the comments. Your support is critical to continuing to bring important topics like this. And remember, balance is the key to a full life. Now tell me, have you ever thought about it that way? Have you noticed how certain habits, which once seemed so natural, start to turn into something more complex over time? What was once just a form of pleasure and relief now can become a cycle of loneliness, an endless search for something that never seems to be enough. But what if I told you that this need, which seems so innocent, may be hiding something much deeper, something that, if ignored, can consume your energy, your motivation, and even your joy of living? What no one tells you is that over the years, our body is not the only one to change. The mind also transforms, and with it, our desires and our needs. And many times, without realizing it, we can be delivering habits that instead of freeing us, are imprisoning us. Have you ever felt that even after pleasure, something is still missing? What instead of feeling satisfied, comes that strange feeling of emptiness? This is no coincidence. This is a sign that something is wrong. The problem is that when we do not pay attention to these signs, the situation only gets worse. The search for pleasure intensifies, the frequency increases, and without realizing it, what was once a choice becomes a need, a compulsion. And the worst, this not only affects your emotional well-being, but it can also impact your health in ways you never imagined. The body wears out, the mind gets tired, and the motivation for other things begins to disappear. Is it worth keeping ignoring this? What if I tell you that there is a reason why you feel that you need this more and more? That there is something behind this desire that in fact has nothing to do with the pleasure itself? What would you do if you found that this habit may be stealing your vital energy, your happiness, and even your ability to connect with other people? Does it look exaggeration? So keep with me, because what I'm going to tell you now can completely change the way you see this situation. Many people do not even realize that they are stuck in this cycle. They follow in automatic without question why they feel this growing need. But the truth is that the more you feed this habit, the harder it becomes to stop. The brain gets used to it. The body responds automatically. And before you realize, what should be a sporadic pleasure becomes something that dominates your thoughts, your actions, your life. Have you ever felt that way? As if you have no more control. And the frightening thing is that it doesn't happen overnight. It's subtle. It begins slowly, almost imperceptible. Once here, another there. But suddenly you realize that something is different. Your energy is no longer the same. Your relationships seem more distant. Your patience has decreased. Your focus is compromised. And here comes the question. Is this all coincidence? Or is there a connection between this practice and the physical and emotional exhaustion you have been feeling? Now think to me. Do you feel that you are always tired? That your disposition is no longer like before? That your mind always seems to be cloudy, clearly without motivation? If your answer is yes, then it's time to face reality. Because what no one tells you is that the excess of this habit may be sucking on your vital energy, draining your strength, and leaving you stuck in a cycle that gradually steals your quality of life. And if you don't do anything about it, it will only get worse. And do you know what is even worse? When this habit becomes a substitute for something much greater. When, instead of looking for real connections, interactions that really do good, the person begins to close, avoid contact, to live in a world where momentary pleasure replaces true affection. And without realizing it, loneliness settles down. And with her comes sadness, anxiety, the feeling that something you can't explain. But does it really need to be like this? Is there no way out? Don't wait. Send it to 3 WhatsApp contacts and write Amen. Today, God will open the right doors for you. The big question is that when you are stuck in this cycle, it is difficult to see what is happening. Your mind convinces you that everything is fine, that it is just a habit, that there is no problem. But deep down, you feel something is wrong. You feel that you are not living fully, that something inside you is pulling you down. But what is really happening? Why does this feeling of emptiness never pass? Why does it seem that no matter how much you try, it's never enough? The answer is simple. Because what you really need is not in this habit. What your soul desires, what your heart yearns, cannot be filled with momentary pleasure. You need something deeper, more true, something that makes you feel really alive, something that brings meaning, purpose, genuine joy. And believe me, you can find it. But for that, it must first recognize that this cycle needs to be broken. The first step to change is to admit that there is a problem. Stop pretending that everything is fine and face the truth head on. Do you feel that this habit is helping you or harming you? Is he freeing you or imprisoning you? Are you bringing you joy or just distracting you of what you really need to be resolved? Because in the end, the question is not the act itself, but what is behind it. What are you trying to avoid? What do you really need? What if I told you that there is another way, that you can feel pleasure, satisfaction, and well-being without having to be stuck to something that in the end only exhausts you? That there are much more powerful ways to feel alive, to connect with yourself and the world around you. Would you believe? Because the truth is that real happiness does not come from isolated moments of pleasure. It comes from the connection, the presence. What gives you a reason to wake up every day with the desire to live? What would you do if you knew that there is a way to recover your energy, your motivation, your joy of living? Would you be willing to take this step? Because the decision is in your hands. You can continue in this cycle, feeling that something is always missing, or you can choose to do something different, look for something bigger. But this choice is yours. And the question I ask you now is, will you keep fooling or finally face the truth? Time does not expect. Life goes by fast. And every day you get stuck in this cycle is one less day to really live. So what are you going to do now? Will you keep ignoring the signs? Or are you going to take the reins of your life and decide that you deserve more? You deserve something better. Because the truth is that you have much more within you than you think. Just need to take the first step. Right? I have hope if you know that God never leaves you. Have you ever stopped to think about the real price you are paying for this habit? I'm not just talking about the time you spend, but the energy you lose, the motivation you get in, the vitality that seems to drain by your fingers without you realizing it. What if I tell you that this behavior is secretly draining your willpower, mental clarity, and even your ability to feel truly alive? Yes, this may be happening right now. And the worst, most people only realize when it's too late. The vicious cycle begins almost imperceptibly. A distraction here, a momentary relief there, but suddenly when you least expect it, you realize that something has changed. You feel more tired, less excited, less motivated for the things that once made you happy. That vibrant energy that once had is no longer there. The connection with others seems more distant, and the feeling of emptiness only grows. But what is really happening inside you? Why should this habit, which should be something natural and healthy, now seems to be pulling you to an endless hole? The answer lies in the way your mind and body react. When you get used to seeking immediate pleasure, your brain learns to depend on it to feel good. The problem is that over time, the effect is no longer the same. What once brought satisfaction now seems insufficient. And to compensate, you feel you need more often, in more intense ways. But does this uncontrollable wish really do you good? Or is it turning you into an erased version of who you were? Many people avoid facing this truth because they are afraid of what they will find out. Fear of realizing that they are trapped in behavior that can no longer control. Fear of admitting that this habit may be destroying your self, confidence, self-esteem, and even your ability to connect with the world around you. But ignoring the problem does not make it less real. On the contrary, it only gives more strength for him to grow quietly until he becomes something much larger than you imagined. Now think about it. How many opportunities have you lost because you are stuck in this cycle? How many times stopped doing something important because your energy was drained? How many valuable moments of real connection did you ignore because you were busy seeking momentary pleasure? Have you ever wondered what you could achieve if all this energy was directed to something that really made you grow? Right? I trust God if you feel your victory is coming. What no one tells you is that this behavior, when it becomes excessive, has devastating effects. It can interfere with your sleep, reducing your quality of rest and constantly exhausted. It can affect your productivity, making simple tasks increasingly difficult to complete. It can even harm your memory and concentration, making your mind look hazy, confused, clearly. And believe me, this is not a chance. This is a clear sign that something needs to change. Dependence on immediate pleasure also weakens your willpower. Gradually, you realize that you have less discipline, less patience, less control over your own decisions. Tasks that were once easy become challenging. Small frustrations seem unbearable. Its ability to resist temptations decreases dramatically. But what is really happening inside you to cause all this? And most importantly, are you willing to continue this way? If you feel that your energy is always low, that your motivation has disappeared, that your life seems to be passing before your eyes without you really enjoying it, then maybe it's time to look deeper into this question. Because what is at stake here is not just a habit. It is your life, your time, your potential. And the question you need to ask yourself now is, how long will you let it control you? What if I told you that there is a way to get out of this cycle, that there is a way to recover your energy, your mental clarity, your will to live? But beware, it will not be easy. This behavior has become a pattern for your brain, and breaking this pattern will require effort, commitment, and, above all, courage. But if you really want to change, if you are willing to resume control of your life, then the transformation is possible. Declare, Amen, I believe, if you trust the divine plan to come. Now let's talk about what really happens in your brain when this habit becomes excessive. Every time you seek this immediate pleasure, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for the feeling of reward. At first, this seems harmless, even beneficial. But the problem arises when this release of dopamine becomes an addiction. Over time, your brain begins to need increasing doses to feel the same level of pleasure. This means that you end up conditioning yourself to seek this habit increasingly frequently, even when you don't want to. And when you try to stop, you feel irritation, anxiety, restlessness, as if something was missing. Have you ever felt that? The worst part is that while this cycle continues, other areas of your life begin to collapse. Its sensitivity to genuine pleasure diminishes, making experiences simple, such as a hug, a conversation, or a moment of real, less satisfactory connection. His mind begins to seek increasingly intense stimuli, making the small joys of life less interesting. And without realizing it, you move away from people, get away from what really matters, gets lost in his cycle that seems to have no end. But there is a way out. And this exit begins with a decision, the decision to recover control, the decision not to let this habit define who you are, the decision to look for something bigger, something that really brings genuine and lasting happiness. This means replacing momentary pleasure with something that really fills you. It means finding healthy ways to release tension and stress. It means reconstructing your energy, your vitality, your strength. And the first step to this is to recognize the problem and decide to act. Right, God is faithful. If He believes, He never fails with those who have faith. The change process will not be easy. Your brain will resist, try to convince you that you don't have to change, that everything is okay to continue as it is. But this is a trap, because deep down, you know it can more. You know you deserve more. You know that your life has a much greater purpose than getting stuck in this cycle. So the question is not if you can change, but if you are willing to do that. Now imagine what your life would be like without this dependence. Imagine waking up every day with energy, with disposition, with mental clarity. Imagine feeling true satisfaction without having to resort to artificial stimuli to fill the emptiness. Imagine recovering yourself, confidence, self-esteem, your ability to deeply connect with others. This is not a distant dream. This is possible if you decide to take the first step today. But the decision is yours. You can continue to ignore the signs, keep letting this habit control your life. Or you can decide that it is time to change, to recover your energy, your vitality, your happiness. What will you choose? Declare, I have hope. If you believe that even the biggest challenges can be overcome. Do you feel you are stuck in a cycle you can't leave? What, no matter how much, the need comes back, stronger, more intense, as if something inside you is pulling you to a path that you already know is not good, but cannot avoid? If so, you need to pay attention, because it may be taking you to a silent abyss. And the worst part, You don't even notice it until it's too late. What many people do not understand is that this habit is not only physical, it is deeply linked to your emotions, your mind, your insecurities. Each time you seek this quick pleasure, it is actually trying to escape something, from a pain, a loneliness, a void that does not want to face. But ignoring this void does not make it disappear. On the contrary, the more you try to fill it with immediate pleasure, the more it grows. And the more it grows, the more you feel the need to go back to this cycle. Does it seem familiar to you? Now think about it. How long will you let this habit consume your energy, your willpower, your ability to enjoy life? How long will you be fooled, saying you have control when, in fact, have you lost a long time ago? If it bothers you, if this sense of dependence is wearing you, then it is because something needs to change. But the question is, are you willing to face the truth? Right? I believe, if you trust God's greatest purpose for your life, the human brain is an amazing machine, but it can also be its worst enemy. It quickly adapts to instant rewards, creating neural paths that reinforce certain behaviors. If you always seek easy pleasure, your brain learns that this is the fastest way to feel good, and it begins to demand it more and more. This is why, over time, this habit becomes compulsive. You feel you need it, even when you know you are doing you bad. This is because your brain no longer responds to pleasure in the same way as before. You have become less sensitive to true pleasure, one that comes from real connections, from achievements, moments of genuine happiness. Now ask yourself, how many times have you felt that you needed this habit, but soon after came that feeling of emptiness, dissatisfaction, as if deep down it wasn't enough? This is because momentary pleasure does not solve anything. It only temporarily distracts the real problem. But what happens when distraction is no longer enough? When cannot even immediate pleasure hide reality? This is where many people come into emotional collapse. That's where loneliness really hits. And you don't want to get to that point. If you feel you need this habit to deal with stress, anxiety, sadness, or any other negative feeling, then you need to understand something very important. This pleasure is not helping you. He is moving you even more from what can really bring lasting happiness. You don't need this to feel good, but to change, you need to be willing to face the truth. What if I tell you that this cycle may be affecting your health in ways you can't imagine? You may think it is harmless, that there are no consequences, but the reality is much darker. This behavior may be stealing your vital energy, weakening your mind, affecting your heart. Yes, literally. Studies show that excess artificial stimuli can negatively affect the functioning of the cardiovascular system, increase level stress, and even contribute to deep depression. Do you really want to risk your health for something that deep down is not bringing you true happiness? And that's not all. This habit may also be destroying its ability to connect with others. The more you cling to him, the harder you become pleasure in real interactions. You may not even realize at first, but gradually relationships begin to look empty, superficial, uninteresting. The touch, the affection, the exchange of looks, all this is losing strength. And when you realize you have already moved away from everyone around you, is it worth it? Have you ever felt your life is stagnant, as if they were stuck in the same place, without evolution, without progress, as if, as much as I tried, could never move forward? This can be a direct effect of this cycle. When you get used to seeking immediate pleasure, you lose patience to the natural processes of life. Everything seems more difficult, more tiring, more demotivating. Your brain begins to demand quick rewards for everything. And when they do not come, you feel frustrated without purpose. But you were not born to live like this. You have not been created to hostage to a habit that drains your vitality. You have a much larger force within you, a force that can get you from this cycle and lead you to a fuller, more significant life. But this will only happen if you decide it deserves more. Right? Jesus, I trust you, believes in God's transforming power. The question now is, what are you going to do with this information? Will you ignore, pretend none of this applied to you? Or are you going to take action, start changing, take the first step to recover your life? The choice is yours. But remember, each passing day is one less day to really live. Do you want to continue wasting your time, your energy, your joy? Or do you want to recover control and finally feel the true pleasure of life? There is no change without effort. There is no transformation without commitment. But the good news is that you don't have to do it yourself. You can count on the help of those who really care about you. You can find support, guidance, motivation to move on. But it all starts with a decision not to accept to live in this cycle. And now, Will you just continue as it is, or will it finally take the first step to change your life? Let I trust if you believe that God is preparing the best for your life. The choice is before you now. Continue in this cycle and allow it to continue draining your energy, your motivation, your ability to live fully, or decide that it arrives, that your life is worth more, that you deserve more. You can break free from this invisible weight that has held you, which has made you feel constant tiredness, empty, demotivation. But this will only happen if you take the first step. What are you going to do with this truth? Ignore, pretend none of this applies to you, or take control of your life and transform this pattern before it consumes you even more? Because the truth is this: time does not stop. Each day you get stuck in this cycle is one less day to really live. Do you really want to look back and realize that you have lost years of your life without realizing it? You already know that this habit has cost you much more than it seems, but now you also know that there is a way out, a path that will demand strength, commitment, and above all, courage. But I know you have this courage inside you. You are not alone. There is hope. There is a future where you feel more alive, more motivated, more connected with what really matters. But this future depends on one thing: your decision. So ask yourself, are you willing to do whatever you need to recover your vitality, your mental clarity, your real happiness? Are you ready to stop seeking empty rewards and finally build a life that really fills you? Because in the end, the only person who can change this reality is you, and the time to do this is now. Right? Amen. If you believe that today God can transform your life for the better,